to the Blessed Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Raquel Toast, and this podcast is to help you experience being blessed that transcends a mere hashtag. Now, you know I'm a firm believer that being blessed is a mindset, and we have to make a daily decision to be blessed. If you're ready to be encouraged, enlightened, and entertained, then you're in the right place. We're broadcasting on WYTV7 Christian Broadcasters Network, a nonprofit charitable radio broadcast with a mission to empower, encourage, and educate. If you are enjoying the Blessed Podcast, please go and donate $10, $15. Every little bit helps at www.wytv7.org. We are sponsored by Tolson's Publishing. For the month of Raytober, you can get free shipping on purchases of $20 or more. So you can go get your copy of Undefiled and get a copy for a friend because, you know, Christmas is coming. So, all right. So we are back with Mark Melvin and Tazima Paris. If y'all missed last week, you got to go back and listen to it because it's just awesome. Tazima, you are a sex and intimacy coach. And I know people are like, we are talking about sex and intimacy on the podcast called Blessed. Well, yes, because that blessed means happy. And I'm just going to put it out there. Y'all might think I'm crazy, but sometimes sex can make you happy. You can feel blessed, you know, when you are really intimate. And then when I not just say sex, because intimacy is so vital to making a person feel great in life. And that's, you know, one of the themes of Undefiled is, you know, true intimacy, because you cannot have true intimacy without really knowing a person, without being seen, being felt, you know, that you feel like you're being seen and heard. You know, all these people out here that are in relationships, but they are craving for intimacy. And so, Tazima, you talked a lot about stuff the last time. So we're going to go back and we're going to continue to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to talk about just the whole intimacy thing. Mark, I think you had something to talk about based on what Tazima said earlier.
Yeah, I just wanted to just touch on, you know, one of the tentacles that she talked about was really being comfortable with who you are and getting to that healthy space. And we realize that sort of life works, that sort of work that is sort of really ongoing and really kind of, you know, shutting out the noise or define all of the social constructs that we're supposed to be, that we're supposed to somehow, our lives are supposed to, you know, conform to. I think that the one thing that really sticks out for me about one choosing to explore bisexuality or to define themselves as being bisexual is that to consider the other individual that you're going to be with. In your book, you know, I think that that story in particular of the young man and lady that was getting married and they called off the wedding, I think I could understand her not wanting to move forward because that not that she was rejecting him is that they had been in a relationship and somehow he didn't feel comfortable enough to share with her something that may have been a conflict for him, or that he somehow thought that she would judge him. But what he didn't do was to give her the opportunity to express how she really felt about it. So while her decision may seem knee-jerk, it's not unreasonable for someone to push back on something that, one, they don't understand, two, that you have not been forthcoming with, and three, that if we're going to have a life together, certainly this is something that I would have liked to have been shared with me. And I think that for consenting couples that move forward with that information, I don't think there's anything else to say other than, you know, they develop the parameters of that relationship. As long as it's respectful and it's not denigrating, it becomes between them.
Right, and that in the title Undefiled, but the problem I think, and when I wrote the book, and Tazima, I really would love for your input, is that because people have these thoughts about bisexuality, and even in the Black community, especially if you're in the church, about homosexuality, a Black man know that if he shares this information, it is not going to go over well usually. And I like I said, I did a short film, and I presented the short film at a church because the pastor of the church, he absolutely loved it. He loved the concept of Undefiled. So he showed it, and not one woman in the church said that they would be able to marry a bisexual man. Now, if you are a man and you hear that, and you know that if you sit in church, you know that this is how people feel, how easy is it to actually, talk about it? And in the same sense, I'm going to just go a step further. Women who have had multiple sex partners, they always divide by 3, and then they're not going to tell you all of the bodies. Tazima, you are a sex and intimacy coach. Tell us more about this.
I love what you were saying earlier, especially about revealing and allowing oneself to be known, because that's actually what intimacy is. So there are 2 types of intimacy in a relationship. And I'm not talking about emotional intimacy and physical intimacy. I'm talking about intimacy with oneself and intimacy with another. You can't have the physical or emotional intimacy with another if you haven't had that physical or emotional intimacy with oneself. And when I say, and some people are going to get up in arms about physical intimacy with oneself, and not everything is sexual. Some of it is literally biology. Let's talk about parts. You need to know your physical body in order to talk to your doctor, in order to communicate what you need, tell if there's pain, if there's, like literally, like you need to know. You can't say down there and get results. You can't. Okay. So getting right with oneself about a challenge that could come up in a relationship. All of us, and it's not just this bisexual piece that came up in Undefiled that you wrote so beautifully about. I love the arc of the story, by the way. So y'all get the book. It's fabulous. If you haven't had it yet, if you haven't read it. There is a level of exploration that you can have with yourself and with another that can be strictly exploratory. People think that, like, as soon as I start going down, towards sexuality and something gets touched and a piece of clothing comes off, then we're all the way slippery slope, and then we're in this place of completely defiling ourselves. Okay, no, you can take steps to be known. Most of us have had some level of sexual trauma, whether that's an emotional piece where you felt scared. So even as much as, so for myself, I was terrified to have a teenage pregnancy because my brother had a teenage pregnancy, but I know that if I had a teenage pregnancy, it would have been a very different situation. My brother was like, my parents were supportive. Everybody was like, oh, he's a superstar. He was a 3-sport athlete, all this stuff. And, oh, well, he has a baby too. Like, it was okay. If that was me being a girl and the stuff that his partner went through as being a teenage mother was way different. All kinds of, space was made for him, but everybody was critical of her, and now it's her fault. And I was just like, so I wasn't going to have a teenager. That affected me in my movements, in my intimacy, literally to the point that I got married the first time and the second time. Okay. Even in both of my marriages, there's still a way that I'm affected by what happened to me as a teenager. And so what I'm saying is that I know this because I've done my work to know myself. I have intimacy with myself. I'm aware of my preferences. I'm aware of what I've explored. I took 9 years literally to explore my sexuality and my relation. I did a relationship experiments. Not everybody's going to do that. And it's not something that I recommend that you do unsupervised. don't talk to me. Call me. Call me. And when you do that work for yourself, knowing yourself intimately, knowing what you can do, what you're sharing, what's going on for you, when you do that, then it's easier, much easier, even if it's uncomfortable, to bring up and reveal those things to a potential partner or the partner that you have, that you've had for some time, even if it's uncomfortable. And by the way, all of this stuff is uncomfortable. Even if you get the, the courage to one day, I'm going to say the thing, it might not land that well with the person. And there's no way that you can control that.
You know what, Tazima, you are so right, because Mark, I remember when we had that conversation about the guy who you said you had heard that he was gay, and I made all of those statements to you that I would do this. I have to be honest. I didn't go back and tell him about that conversation because I wasn't sure if it was the truth. And then if I would have came with him with, rumors, but when I look back in hindsight, I really wished I would have left, New York and went back down to Florida and had the conversation, because I think it would have been awesome to have the conversation. And I bet he never got to have the conversation if it was true. If he was bisexual, he probably never got to. I just have to put it out. I'm not saying his name, but he was a professional athlete. Back then, yeah, that's not something that wasn't manly at all. So I really feel bad now, just in hindsight, like, I missed an opportunity to actually be intimate, and provide intimacy for this guy who I just adored. Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. And that leads to that kind of reveal. There's something that I want to say from the other side of sharing this stuff. It is scary to share these kinds of pieces of information, these things that we hold close and that we're protecting, or that we're afraid of sharing because we're afraid of judgment. When you take the risk to share something that's true for you, I'm talking about true. I'm not talking about, I'm not talking about like baggage and like, I feel like, no, I'm not talking about that. I feel like you did this. I'm talking about what's true for you. If you take the risk to share, hey, I had some experiences that I think are important and are going to affect the way that we interact, it may not land well, but if the person has the capacity to hear and accept and be with you, that person is actually with you and not the representative. And the other great part, I'm going to let that land, because when you send that representative, that's not really you. It's not the real relationship, okay? And when you do that, that other person feels that they can come to you because you become trustworthy. Because you've done the vulnerability first, they feel safer to be vulnerable with you. And that is tremendously valuable inside of an intimate relationship.
Wow. That's good. Mark, did that answer your question?
I think so. And I think that it also speaks to the emotional growth that that brings about possibility in that relationship. And even though, that person is...
technical difficulties. So we're back. And Mark, you were, Tazima just talked about what your question was. What did you feel? Did she answer your question?
Absolutely. And I also believe that she also really pointed to something where it's really identifying the emotional growth that couples have with moving towards this. Once a person is comfortable with being able to disclose that to the person that they're interested in pursuing that relationship with, like you said, it won't necessarily land in the way that you would hope that it will, but it just might. And it just takes you to that next level, and you're building that trust. Relationships are about building trust, exploring, being vulnerable, just like, and trusting that that person will be there for you. And I just think that, again, sexuality is not about something that you should be shameful of. And I think that we got to get to the place where we're not feeling shame around who we love and what we love.
I agree. So I do have this question about the whole sharing and be in the book. When should Anthony have revealed himself to Liz, knowing that this Christian girl 9 times out of 10 would have a problem with his past? And he wanted her. He loved her. He didn't want her to go. And I'm not making excuses for men, but I have seen how men tell the truth and they get crucified for it. They get punished for it. So when is the right time in a relationship to, I guess, actually be intimate?
Well, I think if you're going to be intimate, it involves you're being truthful. And if that is on the first night that you decide that you're going to hook up, just real talk, you should make someone aware that there is the possibility that, one, I may not choose you because I'm also interested in someone of the same sex. I think that when you don't share that information, you take away that person's ability to make choices for themselves. So I think if you know that you're going to be intimate, or if that this relationship is going to evolve into something, because it's just not about you, it's also about the other. It's also about the individual that you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Tazima, you have something to add?
Absolutely. I am an advocate of early and often. Early and often. Not only early specifically because the earlier that you discuss the challenges and the offers and everything that is available and like your interests, all of those pieces give the person enough data to decide who is this person who's with me? Who is this person across from me? Who is this person in bed with me? Absolutely, before you become intimate, as Mark was saying, this is the kind of conversation that is important to have. Now, you may not want to do it right when you got the clothes off. Don't do that. I suggest after a meal. After a meal, it's a good time. But after a meal, but before you become intimate, have the what we call a safer sex conversation. It's not a safe sex conversation because really no sex is safe. It's not. It's just not. It's just safer. There are risks involved when you become physically intimate with someone, and it's important. What's your sexual health history? Have you had a communicable sexual disease? Do you have an ongoing sexual disease? These are important pieces to share so that the person can have the data they need to evaluate what they're going to do next. And if the person doesn't choose you because of something that you are, you haven't wasted 6 months dealing with the person. This is why I believe deeply in early and often, so that you can just sift. Because if that person doesn't really want to get down with a person who likes what you like, then you get to move on, yay, to the next person who will really appreciate who you are. So in the clients that I support, with the clients I support, I encourage them to say whatever it is. And if there's an update, that's what I mean by the early and often. If there's an update, because things change. Something becomes more important. Something shifted. So, oftentimes people, what I found this fascinating. People cheat most often after someone close to them dies.
Wow.
It's not even sexual. Like, like sometimes it's literally not sexual. It's literally them trying to deal with grief that they can't handle, and they do it in a sexual way. So there might be something else going on. So often meaning, please update your partner, just like your phone works a little better when you do the update.
I love that. Do the updates. Don't skip the updates.
Update.
That is like, so, you know what, all I'm hearing, you know, and I'm sure people are like, we're Christians, we wait till we get married. Okay, we can have a conversation about that lie later. But but the thing that I really feel like when I'm listening to both of you talk, when you think about sex, having, or just a relationship period, it requires maturity. It requires maturity. Hence the reason why people under 18 cannot consent. Point blank period, for anybody out there that's over 20 and like people that's 15 and younger. That's hence the reason why I believe that 18-year-olds really they can't consent to relationships with grown people because they don't have the maturity level. And then you have a lot of 20-year-olds, people in college, because that's when we start really getting buck wild. Let's just be honest, in college. But they're not mature enough to have these kind of conversations. They don't even know themselves. Like you said, how can you be intimate with somebody you don't even know you? One of the pastors I had, he used to say, intimacy is into me see. And it's like, how you don't even know you. How you finna be intimate with somebody else? You finna get to know somebody else before you get to know you. Like, I just really feel like when we're talking, especially as a Christian, I like to, sometimes I don't even like calling myself a Christian. I'll say as a follower of the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, who allowed his Christ consciousness to lead him, okay? But as a follower of that person, I really believe that instead of telling children it's a sin to have sex, I think it's better you're not ready. You're mentally mature. You need to be more mature. You need to get to know you. You need to understand your body. You need to be able to do all of these things. I mean, instead of making sex seem like this horrible thing if you have it, because like you said, these kind of things will, even once you get married, you're still thinking sex is bad. And then your husband like, but boo, I put a ring on it. Can I get some? I mean, it's like, we are destroying our families. We're destroying intimacy. We're destroying relationships by putting all of these negative things on sex and sexual relationships and the body and all that stuff, in the name of religion. And I really just don't think that that's what God intended for us to do. I mean, he put Adam and Eve here naked. I'm not even gonna go into that, y'all. Because we only got about 10 minutes left. But come on. When you think about how God put them on this earth without clothes.
Also, God made our bodies.
Right.
There are thousands of nerve endings in our genitals.
Oh, wait.
Thousands of nerve endings in our genitals. God made that. Why? So that we would have shame about it? No. And this is the thing about when we're dealing with sexual shame, mm-hmm. You can't possibly have shame and enjoyment coexisting. You have to deal with the part. And by the way, how are you supposed to go from don't do it to you get married? Okay, now do it skillfully. Do it really well, know everything that needs to be known about. Like, how are you supposed to know? Where would you have learned if you weren't fornicating? If you weren't, how do you know as soon as you cross that threshold of marriage? So how do you undo 20 years? Let's just conservatively say 20 years not to mention folks who are getting married later in life. For 20 years of shame, 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 shame. And then all of a sudden, something beautiful that's shared between two people who are consent. No, it doesn't, it's not just going to flip like that. This is where the inner work goes. This is where that time and space for yourself, knowing yourself, that exploration. And if we stop putting shame on it so early in life, and you can give people information about biology and physiology and quit putting all this extra stuff on it, for health reasons, we need to know these pieces. For health, aside from sexual, and like assuming that kids are going to do bad things with it. If you don't put shame on it, it doesn't have to be bad. You can't. So all of this where I'm going to give y'all some numbers. Do you know that, so in the South of the United States, generally speaking, they have an abstinence or they take sexual education out of the curriculum. Those kids, those young people, have 8 times the pregnancy rates and STI rates of people who are educated in high quality ways, like the young people who are in the Netherlands. They teach them from like time they're 5. They don't get really graphic when they're 5 years old, but they tell them things about, like they have this thing called kissing week or I have fun feelings week or whatever, where they share with the kids when they have feelings of attraction towards someone. And it's like so cute, right? But that's where they start with it. And then age appropriately, they step up in the information so that they can keep current with where they are. Whereas when you just take it out completely, you end up with, and those kids, they don't get pregnant when they first have sex. They're more likely to use condoms the first time they have sex. I forget how many times more they're likely to have in the first time they have sex, they will use condoms or some kind of protection. Why?
Wow.
Because they're educated and they don't automatically run to sin. They're being conscious about it.
Wow. This conversation has been so good. I mean, we needed 2 episodes to talk about this. And let me tell you, I could probably do a whole month on these topics, but maybe next year we'll come back and do some more. We only have 5 minutes left. Tazima, how can people reach you if they want to be supported by you?
The best way to reach out to me is through my website. You can either do that or email me. So my website is www.infiniterelating.com, and my email is just tazima@infiniterelating.com. I do, for those who are entering in relationships, I do have a relationship vision worksheet and exercise that people can go through, and it will help you to have these conversations where if you have something to reveal to your partner, it can help you to do that in a way that is a little safer than being unsupervised.
Mark, I sure appreciate you being here. And I mean, you are just the fact that you really helped me to put, I think, some really good information in this fiction book. It's fiction, but you can come out of this book knowing some really deep things because of your help. And I want to thank you for that.
And I think the takeaway for, speaking directly to my brothers, that, is that, don't live a life of being unhappy because you're afraid of what the world would think of you. Because I really do walk around and I see so many people, particularly now that I'm older, that they're not married and they're really unhappy because, the loves of their lives have gone on because they were afraid to step out and be their authentic selves. And I think that goes for the story you shared earlier about a celebrity marrying her best friend. What was it like for her, going through those years, really loving someone else and being in the relationship that she was in. So I think that we got a lot of work to do. And I think the starting point is here, having this conversation and not assigning labels and being open to the education and how we see the world differently and the different growth spurts that we all have in dealing with this.
Exactly. Hey, if you are listening, if you are new to Blessed, I know you're like, the name may have thrown you, right? Because you probably thought it was nothing but quoting scriptures, but that's not what we're about here. We are about real conversations, real lives. We're about changing mindsets. We're about letting go of mindsets that no longer serve us. And let me tell you, people, this mindset of what hierarchy of sin and all this, it no longer serves us. Let's let it go. All right. Until next week, be blessed.